Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're just gonna give a few moments for everybody to join in. Hello, hello. Yeah, give us a little shout out in the chat. Let us know where you're zooming in from. Hello. Amazing. Hi, Las Vegas. Saipan, hi. It's great for everyone to join us. Okay, I want us to have as much time as possible. Hi, PR, welcome, welcome. For us to get to your questions. We are really excited to have you all. I'm Chloe Walters-Wallace. I'm the Director of Regional Initiatives for Firelight Media, and I oversee the Homegrown regional series. I'm delighted to have everybody here. I would love to point out my wonderful colleague, Winta Gurmai, who won't be joining us for this session, but will be answering your questions in the chat. Thanks. Winta, are you gonna head off screen now? Awesome, thank you. Armando, we will be unmuting everyone later on, but thank you for these questions. I'm really excited to introduce my colleagues, partners in this venture, Amber McClure first and Gloriana Paz will each introduce themselves. I'll pass it to Amber first.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Amber McClure, like Chloe just said. I represent Pacific Islanders in Communications. We were established in 1991 in Honolulu, so I'm in Honolulu now, and we're a national nonprofit organization committed to amplifying Pacific Islander voices. We're excited to help support, fund, and produce this season of Homegrown. And we're also part of the National Multicultural Alliance, and Gloriana is going to introduce herself and the NMCA. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gloriana Paz. I am the program manager at Latino Public Broadcasting. LPB is the leader of development, production, acquisition, and distribution of non-commercial and cultural media that is representative of the Latino culture. And we're also part of the NMCA, which is the National Multicultural Alliance. The NMCA has 5 organizations, which includes LPB, PIC, Black Public Media, Vision Maker Media, and Center for Asian American Media. So we are all very excited to be part of this project. I can't wait to see all the ideas, all the stories, and we're here for anything you need.
Amazing. Thank you so much, partners in venture. As I said before, I'm the Director of Regional Initiatives at Firelight Media. Firelight is the premier destination for nonfiction film, supporting documentary filmmakers of color, and bringing that work to audiences of color across the US and the world. We were founded 22 years ago by veteran documentary filmmaker Stanley Nelson and his partner in crime and all things Marcia Smith. So we are really, really excited to be working with the US territories and Hawaii for one of the first times. This session is for Homegrown Season 2. We are, it'll be several seasons of Homegrown. It's an anthology of 8 shorts. And this time is for you guys to ask us questions and for us to kind of share a little bit about the kind of behind the scenes thoughts, some questions, some specific sections of the application that you might have questions about. And so we'll move into the presentation. Big thanks to Geronimo, who's pulling it up and running it for me. Wonderful. So that's just the beginning slide. You can move to the next slide. Great. What is Homegrown? As I was sharing before, Homegrown was born out of our one of our programs, the regional initiatives, which is an umbrella to work with filmmakers based outside of the film industry hubs of New York City and LA, to really bring opportunities to filmmakers wherever they may be based within the US or the US territories, so that filmmakers can continue to work in film wherever they live and to really inspire sustainable ecosystems for those spaces. This particular initiative, which is a co-production and content initiative, provides a pathway for early career and emerging filmmakers to experience the commission's process through a supportive environment. We'll talk about what a supportive environment looks like, and a platform for distribution through public media and other potential partners. Other potential partners looks like we have screen shorts, both through public media strands, and then they've also had a life on journalistic outlets, those sort of places. Next slide, please. All of this work is wonderfully supported by PBS. I want to give you a little bit of a taste of what last season looked like. Each year, the theme and focus of Homegrown changes. So season 1 started with Future Visions and was based in the Midwest, supporting filmmakers in the Midwest and stories in the Midwest. If you could play the trailer, please.
I think of technology as just another tool.
I want to be an advocate for the downtrodden, because once I was downtrodden.
So a lot of our identity of who we used to be and what we were all about, essentially tell a story.
So we take a hold of this and make sure that our histories get passed on to generations after us.
I would consider us to be first responders. It feels like we're doing something actively to help.
A precious resource that is teaching us how we need to be in the future.
Hi, I'm Rachel Willis, your candidate for Lansing City Council at large.
We're reclaiming our language, our Indigenous language. Migoya.
Thank you so much, Geronimo. We can move to the next slide. So that's a little taste. Playing it again. All right. And now we're moving on to season 2, a part of / apart from. We're really excited to move into season 2 and move to this new region where we're focusing on emerging filmmakers living in the US territories and Hawaii, and as well as the diasporic communities of the US territories and Hawaii, which means people from both of those places or multiple of those places that might be living on the mainland US. So as you saw with Homegrown season 1, all 8 shorts were directed by a span of BIPOC filmmakers. So there were Indigenous filmmakers from the Midwest, Black filmmakers from the Midwest, Asian filmmakers from the Midwest who all created work to be a part of this anthology. A part of and apart from came from this incredible term coined by Michael Bevacqua, who is the host of Fenatu, a podcast that I've been listening to while really thinking about this work. And so the stories for this season of Homegrown will grapple with the issues of sovereignty, agency, and the variety of ways communities negotiate what it means to be a part of and apart from this world, this the United States. We can go to the next slide. Now I just wanted to kind of jump into the creative brief that's a part of the RFP. We wanted to give you I think that podcast is on Apple Podcasts. Thank you, JR, for asking that question. I will swing back to talking about the creative brief. Basically, we wanted to give you a variety of options of what these projects could look like, and kind of what we're thinking of behind this idea of sovereignty, agency, what the topics could span. So, you know, self-determination, duality, bureaucracy, cultural change makers, and we also like to have things be really presented in a holistic way. So what does celebration look like? What does joy look like in this space? What does home and identity look like? What does solidarity look like? Both positive and negative. We also came up with some guiding questions. And these are to help you kind of craft and think about how to frame your application. So what does duality look like in your community? In what ways does the past affect the present? So how is history effect of how the US territories came to be really presenting itself now? What socio-cultural values should be retained? Culture never stays the same, it always shifts. So what needs to be retained? What do we let go of? What communities would benefit from amplification? Who have we never seen on documentary before? Who have we never seen in a nonfiction space before? And are there movements, people, events that have flourished that the rest of the country and the world should know about? And then finally, how can difference be a propelling force? We can move to the next slide. We've gotten a lot of questions about what is a part of the US territories. So we just wanted to really list it here. So that includes Puerto Rico, the US Virgin Islands, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, and American Samoa. We've also included Hawaii because because PIC is an incredible partner for one, and a lot of what's been happening with the US territories has also been happening in Hawaii as well historically. And then there are the diasporic communities of these places in the continental US. So there are certain areas of our country where there are maybe concentrated populations of folks from any of these territories. And so we wanted to open it up to also kind of include this back and forth conversation of what the diaspora looks like. Next slide, please. This is the timeline that you'll be working within. I just really want people to focus in on this because it is tight, because it's a commission process. We are working within a year. And so, as you all know, the submission's already opened. We'll be selecting and notifying projects around the end of October. You'll be contracting with us once selected for about 4 weeks. And then that first round of rough cuts is due pretty early on in the following year. So that's why it's open to filmmakers who are working on projects absolutely from scratch. And then also filmmakers who have works in progress, who maybe have already shot some footage, but haven't had the funding to realize their projects as short documentaries. And then the kind of following cuts are due pretty quickly. It'll be February, March, May. We do a little bit of some space between the fine cut and the picture lock for folks to get a feel. And then finishing will be next. Next slide, please. What you receive, each of the filmmakers selected, so each of the 8 filmmakers will receive $45,000 to create your short, which would be 8 to 15 minutes. You'll also receive artist development support. So that means one person who we're calling a cinematic mentor. So a filmmaker who you admire, who you would like to learn from, was maybe participated in a short commission process before, to help guide you through this. And you'll start out with that person to really help you shape your treatment, help you figure out how to get started with production. You'll also receive a consulting editor as a mentor, and that person will help you through the post-production process, help you to process notes. There are a lot of people giving notes in this process. As you can see, we have multiple partners, as well as PBS and PBS Digital Studios. And then finally, you'll receive support in post-production. So we have, actually there's 2 more support systems. One more is also a station mentor. The aim and goal of this commission process is to really build relationships between filmmakers of color and the public media stations that are in their backyards. So that's kind of part of that sustainable ecosystem idea. We're thinking of, you know, these public television stations and PBS as a platform for you to get your work out. There's post-production support. We are working with a post house to help with the finishing and sweetening and packaging of the projects. And we're figuring out who that is soon. The station partnerships, stations also help you to bring your film to local communities. So each station is contracted to not only provide mentorship, make sure you're adhering to PBS guidelines, but also to do an engagement event. So whether that's virtual or in person, stations are providing like a direct way into community that for us. And then distribution and engagement. We are our lovely partners at PBS Digital Studios put all 8 films up on the PBS flagship YouTube channel. And that is a rollout, which will be weekly or bi-weekly, which really allows each film to get specific focus and support and have conversations around it. The engagement piece is we are working with someone to do audience engagement. So to think about who might be a really interesting voice out in the cultural world, who we could pair you with to really talk about, I don't know, on an Instagram Live, to really talk about the issues you're focusing on with your film. Maybe it's a sort of pop-up event that you'd want to do. We don't fund those engagements, but we provide the support to get those ideas out there when we can. Next slide, please. And so now this is where we get to the application and its highlights. The project synopsis, what I've found in previous iterations of this during season 1, we really want to know what your project is about. So don't hold back from describing who's involved, what's the arc of your story, what's important about this story, What is it going to look and feel like, which we'll kind of talk about in artistic vision and statement later. But the synopsis should really give us a clear description of who, what, where, when we're going to see. And you guys can ask more questions around that later. And then we've added a new question to the application this year of how do you plan to showcase or depict where the film takes place. A lot of filmmakers just do B-roll, but because this is a place-based expression in film, we really want to know what makes the place that you are creating this work from unique. Well, how are you going to showcase that visually? How are you going to land us in the place where you are? For the next one, for prior funding sources, this is important for PBS guidelines. Because PBS is public media, they need to know exactly where, if you have already been shooting, if you've already received funding, where's that money come from, and who is behind it, so that it's, we are as transparent as possible. For the next one, additional supporting materials, and this is really important for filmmakers who maybe don't already have a work sample to show. We'd love to see a lookbook or a deck that really tells us, again, what the look, feel, space, who the people are you're going to be working with will look like. If you're creating this from scratch, we want to get a feel for what your vision is. And then finally, for mentorship goals, that work is about who you want to be your cinematic mentor. Who do you want to learn from to guide you through this process? I'm just going to stop and Amber or Gloriana, do you want to add anything to this part?
For the mentorship, I just wanted to clarify, it can be anyone that you name. It doesn't have to be someone already you have a relationship with, or that Firelight is in a relationship with.
Or pick. Yes, absolutely correct.
That's all.
Gloriana?
No, not in my end. Everything is super clear.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So we ran through that really quickly, and now is the time for questions. We're going to open it up so that folks we won't see you, but you can ask questions verbally, or you can put them in I think Winta has us putting stuff in the Q&A box. Is that right, Winta?
Yes. And can you see the Q&A box?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have one question from Rashid Peters. Can you see it?
Yes. Yes. Hi, Rashid. Thank you so much for your question. The people for the jury for the selection part of the application process will be the folks you see here. So myself, Amber, Gloriana, Fiona, or someone else from Black Public Media, Winta, as well as we'll be bringing external reviewers in, who one from each US territory, to kind of give a kind of fully rounded space and understanding of what the stories might be. And also we'll probably bring in a station mentor. We're still figuring out whether or not we'll be able to make that happen. Demetrius, thank you also for your question. You as a filmmaker will own the copyright of the film, but Firelight and PBS will license it from you. Hi, Eli, how are you? We'll be licensing it from you, and that contract is for 4 years, non-exclusively. Feel free to ask us a follow-up question about that. Misa. No, Misa. Hi, Misa. Unfortunately, a mentor cannot be a part of your crew because we're contracting with them separately. We compensate mentors for their time. So that is how that works. Yeah, if everyone can, put your questions in the Q&A box. I think it's at the bottom of the screen.
Yes, if you click on the 3 dots that say more at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a whole menu of things that pop up, and Q&A is one of them.
Okay, great.
The next question is from Lisette. She knows funding is targeted primarily for emerging filmmakers, but will it be also open to mid-career or seasoned filmmakers?
Amber, Gloriana, do you want to take that? Or should I?
You can, since you did season 1, maybe you could give background on the goals for the project.
For sure. Yes, absolutely. So Lisette, all of our work for regional initiatives is for early career or emerging filmmakers. We have other sources of funding for mid-career or seasoned filmmakers through Firelight. One is our William Greaves Fund, and then we have a Greaves Production Fund, which is also targeted towards PBS. The Williams Greaves Fund is an R&D fund, so research and development. I know also that LPB and PIC has opportunities if you guys want to share any of that for mid-career or seasoned filmmakers.
Sure. Hi, Lizette. We have our shorts fund that will be opening up tomorrow, actually, and that application will be open through October 6th. So if you're really interested in Homegrown, but it's not quite the right fit, please look into our shorts fund, and I'll put a link in the chat right now.
For us at LPB, we have an annual initiative, which is our open call, and we have 3 different funds. We have the Public Media Content Fund, we have the Current Issues Fund, and the Digital Media Fund, which is where we have all the shorts that could be fiction or nonfiction or short documentaries. Right now, the process is already closed. So if you would like to follow us in social media or check our website, we'll be announcing the next open call in the spring of 2024.
Awesome. Pamela has another question. I don't have a sample. I have videos on YouTube. I don't have a website. The short answer for that is yes, Pamela, you absolutely can still apply. Videos on YouTube would count as prior work, depending on if you were the director or producer of those projects. So yeah, and we're also very invested in supporting first-time filmmakers through this process. At least every season, there is at least one first-time filmmaker, but who has an understanding of documentaries and the documentary process and a clear vision of what they want to show. Kiona, thank you for sharing that about Black Public Media. Everyone, gather more resources from BPM, another incredible organization and partner. Okay. Does the post-production costs be covered by the program, or does that need to be absorbed within the $45K budget? The $45,000 is the full budget for the film. So yes, that will be absorbed within the budget. Diego, I love that you have multiple ideas. I absolutely do. You can propose more than one idea, but I would love it if you could keep it to two of your strongest. What do you think, Amber, Gloriana?
I might recommend checking in with folks on your team, or even checking with us to see if perhaps one of the ideas might be a little stronger or more feasible, and we'd be happy to give feedback on that. It does seem like a better approach to put your energy into creating one really solid proposal, and like I said, we'd be happy to take a look. That's my suggestion.
Thank you, Amber. Gloriana?
Yes, I agree 100% with Amber. I would just, you know, as you said, Chloe, the two strongest ideas, and then just focus on one. That would be my suggestion too.
All right. Hi, Natalie. How are you? Great to hear from you. Yes. So the question is this call open for experimental nonfiction projects or hybrid projects based in the U.S. territories? I would say that the answer is yes, but to remember that this project is within the scope of the PBS system. So experimental in that it's right in the right format for public media. So anything that is extremely experimental, doesn't necessarily have a story arc, is kind of non-linear, might be a little tougher, but we are open to what I'd call like soft experimental. We had a project in Homegrown season 2 where our filmmaker worked really interestingly with archival material, archival home videos, and meshing them between that and graphic treatment and graphic design and animation. I hope that answers the question. Next one. Part of my story connects in England and Canada. Can I hire, list a UK production company as part of creative personnel? Yes, you can. We've often had projects that span different countries, that have moved outside of the US, because obviously this world is deeply interconnected. I don't always recommend that as the way to really focus a place to focus your funding. But yes, you absolutely can list and or hire a production company as that part of creative personnel. Amber and Gloriana, please jump in whenever you feel like. Geronimo, can you have all three of us up on the same time? Just so I can know when. Yes, awesome. Wonderful. Since Firelight is partnering with PBS, does that mean that all topics pitched should be broadcast friendly? Not sure how specific I can get, but for example, topics related to sexual identity or such, and is that not broadcast friendly? I first just want to say, and I'd love for Gloriana and Amber to jump in here, topics related to sexual identity definitely are broadcast friendly. Projects that are specifically showcasing sexual acts, expletives. Amber and Gloriana, could you help me out with a kind of list of what that looks like?
Sure, we get asked this question from time to time, and it can be helpful to take a look at PBS's Standards and Practices website. They have a very thorough and user-friendly series of web pages that talk about like ideas that have come across to PBS and how they make the decision about what is and isn't likely to make it to broadcast. So I can drop that link in the chat. That sometimes that's the fastest way. I'd welcome you to look through our website to take a look at all of the programs that we fund to see if there might be some topics that you weren't sure were acceptable. And also it's something that might require more of a conversation, so we could also talk offline about it, but I'll put the link to the Standards and Practices website and then also our PIC website.
Awesome. Okay, next question. Are the mentors pre-selected by you or do we propose them? They are proposed to us. We have a whole section where we're asking you who you would like and what you would like from them, because sometimes people propose, you can propose everyone, but we're not going to be able to get major celebrities, probably not. That's not within our possibilities. So once we get an idea of who you're looking for, then we can also make some recommendations. But we want to make sure that you have a clear and wonderful relationship with your mentor that extends past this initiative. Anybody want to add anything to that? No? Okay, cool. All right. Let's see. Would a film about Afghan American sisters qualify under the requirements? Also, will the slides be available after this session? I've been asked this question for a few different types of folks. It would depend if the Afghan American sisters come from the US territories, Hawaii, or those diasporas. And the slides will be available after this session, and we'll be putting this fully recorded session up on the Firelight YouTube. Do the word counts need to be reached or just not exceeded? Just not exceeded. Because we're going to be reading a lot of applications, we'd love for you to keep it within those word counts. Hi, Eli. Thank you for joining us today. What qualifies as being an emerging filmmaker? We have this listed out in the RFP, but we're looking for filmmakers that we actually have this definition. Let me pull it up really quickly because I don't want to misquote it. There we are. I'm not finding it right now. Do you guys have it up? I think that's something that we can paste in the chat. Winter, could you look that up? Because we have a specific definition. Essentially, we're looking for early career filmmakers. So folks who have not worked with the PBS system before, or who maybe have made a few shorts, have not made a feature. And that's kind of what we determine as our early career or emerging filmmaker. Winter will bring it up and paste it in there for us. Ashley, to confirm, you have to reside in one of the listed territories to be considered. I'm in Chicago. You do not have to reside in one of the listed territories, but you do have to be a descendant of the heritage of those territories. So connected to the experience of what it means to be from Guam, from Puerto Rico, from the US Virgin Islands, from American Samoa. There's a diaspora of Pacific Islanders. I think of there's like a diaspora of Marshallese folks in Arkansas, if you can think of in that kind of sense. There's a diaspora of Puerto Rican folks in Orlando. We're kind of looking at both those connections of the US territories and where people might have migrated to. Gloriana, Amber, thoughts on this? This is probably one of the most frequent questions we get.
We do encounter this question from time to time for our funding because it's inclusive of Pacific Islands. So we have a specific list, and so I'll drop that into the chat as well for Pacific Islanders and communications. But I believe the only other exclusion is the filmmaker, the applicant should not reside in New York City or LA, but otherwise you don't have to live in a particular place. But the story would focus on these places. So I'll add that right now.
Awesome. Thanks. And Gloriana, you're good, right?
I'm good, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. All right. Sorry, y'all, I have to. Pamela, we just put this answer in the chat. Winter helped us out with that. Erica, do you need to list a mentor's name or just talk about what topics and things you would want to discuss with a mentor and be open to matching with a mentor from Firelight? There's going to be two separate questions. One that asks what you want, and then one that asks for names, I believe. So you'd have to, and both of those are required. So if you're open to matching with a mentor from Firelight, check out our website and all of the filmmakers that have been a part of that, and send us some names. There's don't have to be the absolute names, because if you're selected, we'll go back and have a conversation with you about it. How many total projects will receive funding? 8 projects. Is it appropriate for a youth organization who is working with a cohort of high school students to develop a short film to tell their story about disparity? Will the cohort be considered an emerging filmmaker? From Dwayne. Wow, this is a question that I have not been asked yet. I think that might be complex in terms of knowing who the copyright would belong to for the film. But it's an interesting idea that we should maybe discuss amongst ourselves. I don't think I have the answer for that right now, but thank you for asking that, Dwayne. That's an interesting approach. And anybody want to add to that? Okay, cool. We'll move to the next one. Thank you, Dwayne. For the project sample from Omar, does it have to be a sample of this exact doc we intend to create, or can it be previous work that highlights the same topic and community? There's 2 sections. For the current work sample, it is not required to submit that, but previous work is required because we want to see what you've worked on before, how you've envisioned something, how you think about things visually. And that could mean that you were a producer on a project, that could mean that you were a DP on a project. We want to see that you've been kind of in this work before and know how to create a vision of a documentary. We can apply as a director and producer team, correct? So 2 applicants. Yes, you absolutely can, Sylvia. Hi, Sylvia. You can apply as a director and producer team, but that should be just one application. Where can we find the application? Winter, if you could type the answer to this question, that would be great. So that's in the chat now. I think I already answered that question about living in Chicago. Hi, Hector. Does the story have to be related to US territories, or could it be developed entirely within our communities outside of the US? The story has to be related to the US territories based under those, that kind of creative brief that that I went through before earlier. Sovereignty, agency, duality, community, celebration, those things. For previously created, completed work section, can you include narrative work, or is it strictly documentary? I'm open to narrative work. That is obviously a very different process, and we'll be considering your project differently, but it's still just good to know what you've worked on before as a filmmaker. For the budget, I have no idea what all the deliverables are, let alone what those costs are. Do I leave those out of the budget, or should I take a stab at it? Thoughts, Amber and Gloriana.
I think maybe the bigger question is, the filmmakers, are they required to stay within that 45,000, or
Yes.
So going from there, we have that's a good question. Chloe, how would you answer that?
I would say that I think that your budget should tell the story of your film. So it should include, you know, locations. It should include, and really thinking about where you're going to be going. Are you going to be going internationally? Are you going to be staying in one specific place? Do you need archival material? I would really think about your film, and then we have a supervising producer, if you are selected, to help you right size your budget. So we just kind of want to know how you're thinking of spending this film. Thank you, Kiona, for sharing that as well in the chat. And like what that's going to encompass in terms of how your film's going to be created. I hope that helps and makes sense. And thinking about, you know, past the life of just the production, film festivals, submissions in those ways. It's also something that you can reach out to us and discuss directly offline. Can the mentor be outside of the US? Yes, that was an easy one. Thank you, Marisol. Amber, yay. I think that's a great question. Would you want work samples from me as the applicant only, or can we use work samples from hired production company producer? I would want work samples from the applicant, and then in the additional materials, you can include those work samples, like a link to that from the production company and producer. Thank you, Dwayne. How much previous work should we submit to avoid submitting too much? You should select the strongest of your previous work that might closely relate to the ethos of the film you want to tell, the format of the film you want to tell. Gloriana, Amber. What do you think?
I can see that there's a lot of questions about the sample. I would like to say my experience as a reviewer before, when we check on samples, we're always looking for the, for example, the filmmaking style. And for us, when we're doing open call, it doesn't matter if, sorry, I'm just seeing here a question about the music, the sample, only us is going to see it. So sometimes we just ask, like, put a note here, saying that, this is not clear, or that, this is only for internal review. So hope I answered that question about the music. Yeah, I don't know if Chloe or Amber has anything else to say about this.
I just responded in I typed the answer. The question was if you can include music in the sample that you don't have rights for. Yes, because that's not going to be shared publicly, but you should let us know that you don't have the rights for it when you're doing in your description. But if it's giving us like a little vibe of kind of where you're going, that's totally fine. Sorry, there are no dumb questions here, just to say that first. Is the topic exclusive to communities from the listed territories, or can we feature other immigrant communities, like the Somali American documentary from season 1? The topic should be exclusive from the listed territories. The Somali American project from last season was still connected to the Midwest because it was based in Minnesota and Minneapolis. And that's where the focus of that season was, on the Midwest and what communities were kind of burgeoning, have been there as part of that. Can filmmakers from another nationality citizenship apply? I am currently living in the US, but originally I am from Pakistan. Yes, you can still apply. That was great. Thank you for asking. However, you should be very accountable to whichever community you are planning to showcase work with. And we have a question about what your connection to the community you're going to be documenting is. So just to make sure that that's the part, this answer. I think we already answered this question about multiple previous works. Does the money go directly to the filmmaker, or can it go towards a nonprofit partner? The money has to go directly to the filmmaker or to a fiscal sponsor who will be managing your monies for you. Gloriana, Amber, do you want to chime in on this?
PIC's contract is the same, so we are able to enter into contract with an individual filmmaker or a fiscal sponsor. Sometimes this applies if the applicant or the filmmaker is not a US citizen. So in order to receive the funds, you would locate a fiscal sponsor, an appropriate fiscal sponsor.
And just to be clear, we don't ask questions about citizenship at all. JR, thank you for asking this question. Could this film be adapted into a longer form project, like a feature or series following completion of the short? Yes, you absolutely can do that. But as part of our contract, PBS would have, I can't remember if it's first right of refusal or last right, but PBS would have to, you would have to bring that idea and development idea to PBS first before moving to develop it elsewhere.
Chloe, sorry, can I interrupt?
Sure.
I forgot.
Absolutely.
Also, a production company. So we can enter into contract with an individual production company or fiscal sponsor. I just wanted to make sure to not leave that out.
Thank you, Amber. And that's the same with us. Erica, I am Haitian, but moved to the U.S. Virgin Islands as a teenager and became naturalized and lived there for over 15 years. As I'm not a native U.S. Virgin Island resident, but immigrated and grew up there, would I be eligible? Absolutely. I think that anyone who's experienced long lengths of time and deeply rooted in the culture of the places that they are, certainly can apply. Again, you'll have to explain your connection to the story and how you're accountable to the community that you'll be documenting. For the sample, can we share a portion of an unreleased or work in progress stock? Absolutely. If it is the same, if it's the same film as you'd be proposing, then that would go in the current work sample. But either way, yes, the answer is yes. About how long does it take to complete the application? I have no idea. I have not tried to fill it out. And it would depend on how much you want to say within the word counts provided. The money awarded is considered taxable income, correct? Yes, that is correct. Gloriana, do you want to talk? Yeah, please, that would be awesome.
Yeah, no, I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It looks like we've come to the end of our Q&A questions. These are all fantastic questions. I don't know if there were any in the chat that folks forgot to move into the Q&A. We have 3 minutes left before we go. Wonderful. Thank you, Amber, for sharing that. Thank you. Absolutely. Okay, then I guess we can start wrapping up. If you put your answer in the chat and you have more questions, Winta just shared her contact information. Amber shared her contact information. I am also Chloe at Firelight Media. I think Gloriana's about to share hers. I see her furiously typing before we close. But thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciated the time that you all came to join us. Thanks, Amber. Thank you, Kiona, for sharing those questions as well. I mean, sorry, your email as well. Really appreciate everybody coming. Looking forward to seeing all of your applications. Oh, there's one more up. Thanks, Ramon. Appreciate that.
Yay.
Yay. All right. Oh. I don't know if we can share the Q&A thread, but we will try to do so. We asked to have the questions in the chat downloaded. I'm sure that we can do that for the Q&A as well. So we will try to do that. I think that's it. Okay, everyone. Good day. Thanks.